Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. On this week's episode, I interviewed Jim Crider. Jim and I met down in Miami, but we had also met on the internet before, and he is a financial planner, certified financial planner, and his company is called Intentional Living Financial Planning. So you can go to intentionallivingfp.com. But you'll see here that Jim's goal is to get people to have financial independence, which basically is what we all need so that we can enjoy the time on this earth, and enjoy those around us. So, wouldn't we all like that? And Jim's really smart. I kind of told him, I think after the show, I said, you're kind of like the Bitcoin version of Dave Ramsey. Where he does a good job, and I'll let him do the talking through the episode where he shows how he talks to his clients, he lays out their goals, and then always uses that as a reference point going forward. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Jim, and I'll definitely be having him on again. And I hope you guys enjoy it as well. And I hope you guys check out the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple. Use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off. And also shout out to the new movie coming to Movies Plus. We have a lot of them, but as you guys know, currently, or up to this point, there have been 5 Bitcoin documentaries on there, and we just added a fifth or a sixth. Wow, my brain. We just added a sixth. So go to mymoviesplus.com and check it out. It is the Bond to Unbind, which is about the Bitcoin in El Salvador, and so we're adding tons of Bitcoin content all the time. There's a lot of conversations happening around in the background. So I hope you guys check that out, and I will talk to you guys later. I have to admit, whenever we met at the conference, um, I'm sitting there and I'm like, how do I know this guy? Like, I know, so like we followed each other on Twitter and everything, and you would come into some spaces, but I don't know what it was, but maybe it was your profile picture. Like, I think you're like with I was just looking at your profile picture trying to explain how this, but like you had the yellow background and you're blonde like me. I mean, now my hair is brown, but I was a blonde, like I was a towhead as a kid. And so like I don't know if it like maybe in my mind distorted like the proportions of your head or your beard or whatever. So like I'm sitting there, like you were talking with a group of people, and I knew a couple of people there, and so I just come up and start talking, and we're sitting there, and I'm like, how do I know that? I swear I know this guy from somewhere, but I couldn't place you. And then like as we're talking, we're like, hey, let's make sure we're following each other on Twitter, and we pull it up, and we were following each other. And I was like, oh, okay, there we go. And then I realized who you were.
That guy looked familiar, but his head's not nearly as large as the picture made it seem. It's funny. People, in Miami, I don't know how many times people told me that I'm taller than I looked at my picture. It was like the pictures are like shoulders up.
Yeah, that's how everybody was. Like I was so off on everybody's height, like, and it was just weird, like going from 2 years of talking to people via Twitter Spaces and Zoom, and then all of a sudden you're standing next to each other, and you're like, okay, like I joked before on this, but I said I thought that like Luke, I thought like it looked like he was a lot shorter, and in my mind, and then like whenever I met him, somebody like had clicked the right corner of like in a Photoshop picture and just like resized him bigger because it was like proportionally he was all the same, but I was like, oh, you are definitely bigger than I thought. It's just funny how that worked out.
We met is Preston and I were meeting in the lobby, and he had texted and was like, "Hey, I'll be over here." Anyways, I was talking to Andy Edstrom, and he's like, "Oh, you're about to meet Preston." He's like, "Do you know where he is?" I was like, "Yeah, he's coming from over here." But anyways, he was asking like how tall he is. I was like, "I don't know," but I was joking around. I was like, "I guess Preston sounds like he's probably about 5'11" or so." But yeah, we're all just guessing. Like, how do I look for this person besides their without the laser eyes too? So
Exactly, yeah. Well, it was funny too because I came over. I think I was saying hi to Daniel Prince, and then I didn't even realize Preston was standing right there, and he goes, "Hey, I know this guy," and I looked at him and I was like, "Oh, hey," because I don't know if you probably haven't like heard, but I did an episode with him a while back, and he's from Pittsburgh, So we're both like Pittsburgh natives and everything like that. And then like I moved to a very small rural community this is where he hails from. Like, so it's just like kind of funny that, I'm sitting there on this Zoom call with him and I was like, we're talking about like people with like last names, like, oh yeah, I know that person, like, and I mean, like, when I came back from the conference, I went to like, I had to get new tires on my car and go pick it up. I'm sitting there talking to somebody that I met in town and, I said, oh yeah, I was just at the Bitcoin conference and they mentioned his name. I was like, yep. Yeah, yep, he was there. There's more than people than just this little town that were there. But yeah, it was. I don't know. What did you think of the conference? I thought because I don't really care. I mean, there was a lot of shit coiners and whatnot talking, but I honestly, it was more like to me the community and like getting together with everyone.
Exactly. I spent the majority of my time actually at the conference on the side stages, and frankly, that's where the most of the good meat was like in the mining stage, and these guys, like, that's what Bitcoin is. It's the people behind the scenes rather than, I don't know, athletes,
celebrities.
It's like, why is this the way that we're propagating Bitcoin versus like what makes Bitcoin important is not the fact that Serena Williams or Venus Williams, whoever it was, owns it. Like, it is the soundness, the technology, and the I don't know, the underlying fundamentals that makes this important. That should be what is displayed. Yeah. Meanwhile, we're sitting here hyping it up, and that's what's confusing people. People who don't understand Bitcoin. We get mad that people lump Bitcoin and crypto into one place, yet we put people on stages who use Bitcoin and crypto as in a synonymous manner. It's like, well, of course, like we're perpetuating that confusion. And if we instead the main stage was like these conversations on the technical side, then that would be the message that's getting out. And ultimately that's what's going to lead to people understanding why Bitcoin is important. It's not important because a celebrity owns it. So that's where I spent most of my time. And I wish that was what's on the bigger stage. But yeah, I loved the community. Just getting to hang out and meet lots of people. I was there. I have 3 kids, and my wife, my wife and kids didn't go. So it was just me for like 3 or 4 days running around Miami. It was bizarre. I felt like a college kid again or something.
I know. I was in the same boat. I was like sitting there, like, I mean, I felt I anytime I leave, and I haven't left on a business. That was the first business trip I did since COVID. But before that, I went on business trips all the time, and I have 2 kids, and anytime I had to leave, I always would like, I mean, I'm an emotional guy. I'd get sad. I always hated leaving them. And then once you got out the door and you got to like your destination, you're all right. So I was sitting there like feeling bad about leaving for the conference. And my wife was like, are you kidding me? You're going to Miami to me, as she kept saying, meet all your magic internet friends. And, and she's like, and you get to, sleep in a bed all by yourself, and it's gonna be quiet and nobody's gonna wake you up. And like she's like, so what do you feel bad about? And I was like, well, when you put it that way,
Yeah, my wife, I tried to get Kendra to come, and she was like, I don't want to go to Miami and hang out with a bunch of Bitcoiners. That sounds terrible.
That's exactly what my wife says.
As she's driving me to the airport, she was like, why did I say I don't want to come? Like, please let me go with you.
That's what maybe we should have our wives meet up and hang out, because that's exactly what she said. She was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want to do, is go to Miami and hang out with a bunch of nerds talking about Bitcoin.
Yep.
I was like, well, I mean, maybe that's what we should do, is organize the Wives of Bitcoiners conference that goes adjacent to whatever conference or wherever it's at. That they could all get together and just laugh at us. And
I think you're onto something with that.
yeah, we should do something. So before we get into what your company does and everything like that, I was curious as to what your Bitcoin backstory was. How did you get into it? When did you get into it? And all that kind of stuff.
So, the famous multiple touch points before you actually adopt Bitcoin. So my first touch point was in 2012. I was living in Boulder, Colorado, and the guy I worked with always asked our boss to pay us in Bitcoin. But I didn't listen to what that guy had to say. I think he was like high most of the time, probably. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to listen to him. And man, I regret that obviously now. But that was my first touch point. But then really how I got into this was I've been listening to Preston Pish and Stig on We Study Billionaires and the Investors podcast since probably like 2015. I think it was the first podcast I listened to ever. And just listening to their conversations on macro and their thoughts on analyzing companies and studying people who have, strong backgrounds. They're not hype people. They're analytical and well thought out. So I trusted them. So as they started discussing Bitcoin in an early stance, like I think their first conversation on Bitcoin is like 2016 or 2017, I thought that was interesting. And their conversation was very speculative. But moving on, as those conversations went from speculating and curiosity to understanding and really reinforcing this as being possibly something of value, that really piqued my interest because they had established themselves as credible rather than as, people like just a bunch of bros who just happened to buy something early on so they could, buy weed on the Silk Road or something. These guys had actually thought through it. And that credibility forced me to think, if they see something here, these guys are smarter than I am, I better look into this as well. So that's how I got into it. So I started really get into Bitcoin about 2017. And then this happened to work out like this. It wasn't planned. I'm not a genius, but in 2020, right when the COVID dip took place, I was actually transitioning the vast majority of my wife and our money from one institution to another. So it was all out of the market at that point. So I missed that like few week massive 23% dip during COVID, and market went to junk. And that's right when I really became a Bitcoin maxi. And at that point, that's when I went and just bought in. There's 100% into Bitcoin, and anything that was inside of retirement accounts and stuff went to like Bitcoin mining companies and Grayscale. But yeah, at that point, I drank the Kool-Aid and haven't really looked back.
Yeah. No, it's sounds similar. I mean, I didn't transition. I wasn't transitioning between again, but I dumped my 401k. I was like, get rid of this thing, and I'm like, go all in, because like you said, there's very few people that got it early and like really understood it. Like Guy Swan and his brother Jeff are two of the people that like have got it that early and stayed Bitcoiners. I mean, there's like Andreas and there's Roger Ver and everybody who, they got it early, but then went astray. So yeah, I think there was a big divide, where it was like, oh, it's just getting used for pot on the Silk Road or something, so like, why would I, touch that? And then, yeah, I think, I'm with you there. Like the fact that, people like Preston and Stig and just other people in the place with like value investors, where it's like value investors like are really valuing this. Like there's something here. There's a reason, what do you think about like the general view? Because like I think I heard Preston say one time, he was like, I just want to get back to my value investing, because everything's so broken. So like, what do you think is of value right now? Is Bitcoin the only thing of value?
Man, that's hard to say. Everything is so broken. It's infuriating. Things that are supposed to be safe, there is no safe asset. And I would say, well, there's a few things you have to look through. One is risks. So there's risk in everything you do. And even if we put that to like a physical standard. So if let's say you were someone who was a hypochondriac, so you were afraid to go out in public and do things because you're afraid of getting hurt or getting sick. So you became a shut-in to protect yourself from the risk of whatever, catching a disease. So you just stayed in your house all day. Well, that's really risky. It's just a sneaky risk. That risk is the fact that one, is probably going to lead to like poor mental health. Two, you might not get enough sunlight and you're not getting enough exercise. So you're going to maybe become obese and be vitamin K deficient, or vitamin D deficient rather, and then you'll die early. I'm not saying that you should go out and, I don't know, just drive a motorcycle on the highway and live a crazy life, but you have to recognize no matter what you're doing, there is risk. And that's where this these supposed risk-free assets, so U.S. treasuries or even the U.S. dollar, there are risks there. And the risk of, people say that, buying stocks or buying Bitcoin is risky, so I'm going to not have any risk by owning cash. I would say cash is the equivalent of becoming a shut-in at your house. Like, you're subjecting yourself to it used to be a slow death. Now it's becoming a much more quick death. But you have to understand there's risk in everything you do. Now, also with that, we have to decouple the term risk from volatility. Risk and volatility are not the same. Again, if you look at risk is not the movement of a price. Risk ultimately is the inability to do what's important to you. So if you own Bitcoin and you need that money in a week and you just go and buy all Bitcoin with that, that's a very risky thing to do because there's a possibility that Bitcoin goes down. Therefore, you're not able to do that, okay, because of the volatility. Versus if you own Bitcoin and you need that money in a decade, I would say that's less risky. It goes the same with traditional asset classes. Volatility and risk are correlated, but they're not the same. And that's where people think that Bitcoin is risky because it is volatile in its price. I would argue that Bitcoin, the Bitcoin with the big B and the Bitcoin with the small b, the asset, the price of Bitcoin, I would argue that's becoming less risky on a daily basis as we see things like Canada and countries starting to default and countries like we're seeing in real time, country after country starting to see inflation and possibly hyperinflation. And that is just propping up the narrative of why Bitcoin is actually important. And yes, it's still volatile, but again, I think it's becoming less risky in itself. Back to your original question, value investing, is there anything that's not risky right now? I don't know. That's the hardest question. It's funny. I've asked really smart people this question, like people that you and I listen to. I'll grab their ear and ask them like, hey, if, Foss and even like Preston, people like this, they say, buy Bitcoin and put it in storage for a decade. But I, as a financial planner, I can't just tell my clients that. Like, not every need they have is a decade out. I have a lot of families I work with that maybe you sold your house and you're renting for 2 years until you figure out, while you're figuring out where you want to build your next house. Well, what do you do with cash for the next 2 years? Now, we're not talking 10, but 2. And that's a really, really tough question. It's funny because I've asked a lot of really smart people that, and they just laugh and say, man, that's why I don't want to have your job because I don't know what a safe asset class is. And that's where I do take a lot of heat from Bitcoin maxis as far as saying like, yeah, you should have a cash US dollar emergency fund because again, that's looking at the volatility and the risk of not being able to do something if you have a short-term need. But I'm sort of rambling at this point.
No, keep going. I'm with you. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, it's again, you have to look at how comfortable are you with the price movement of something and understanding the difference between risk and volatility as well. A risky thing to do as well on a personal stance, it would be risky for you to buy Bitcoin if you can't stomach an 85% drop. Just like, if we went to Six Flags or Busch Gardens or a theme park, and we were going to go on a roller coaster. These roller coasters are pretty safe and they're well engineered and safe. Yeah, some people die, I guess, but they're really safe things to do. Yeah. So the risk is not with the roller coaster itself. The risk is the fact that maybe, Cory, you got on the roller coaster thinking like, yeah, other people have done this. I don't like doing these, but I guess it's okay. Then we get on and we start going up the hill and you start going up. We get to the very top and you say, you know what? This isn't for me. And as we start going down that first drop, you say, yeah, I'm bailing. So then you take off your seatbelt. It's not the ride itself that was risky. It was your ability to handle the volatility and the movement. So that's where you have to understand what is my ability to stomach risk and movement. That is paramount. There's this big, have you ever heard of the behavior gap?
I've heard of it, but go with it.
Yeah. So behavior gap, it was done in traditional finance years ago. Basically, a study was done on trying to find the difference between investment and investor returns. So basically, it pulled a bunch of data from mutual funds and said, what's the track record and average performance of these group of funds? And it was like 9.2% annualized rate of return. Then they looked at people who invested in those funds. So people who invested in those exact funds that got about 9.2%, the people on average had about a 7% rate of return. So there's a behavior gap of about 2%. They invested in those exact funds. So that can only be attributed to behavior. So we have to address your ability to stay with the initial plan and stick to something. Again, not getting on that roller coaster and freaking out at the wrong times. That's super important.
Plus, if you jump off the roller coaster at like, if you're 90% of the way down the hill, and you're like, oh, it's only a 10-foot drop, but the speed you're going, you're going to die.
Exactly. It's if you're not willing to do that ride, I'm not saying no, you shouldn't ride at all. It doesn't have to be, the giant roller coaster. Maybe you should just start off on the merry-go-round. We talk
ride
about
the
like
turtles,
Yeah, we talk about get off zero. It's like, look, I'm not telling you to go do the giant loopy roller coaster. Maybe go do the Dumbo ride or something. Like, that's okay. Do something that's going to be sustainable for you, where you don't actually self-sabotage. That's one of the biggest things is self-sabotage. It's not the investment. A lot of times, yeah, there's bad investments, but a lot of it is actually attributed to poor performance related to your ability to stomach the performance of investment. And that's one thing that actually has me really concerned right now is this with this market is who knows what's going to happen. Maybe tomorrow it's going to be announced that we're going to print $1 zillion and we're going to have helicopter money again and interest rates are going to go back down and everyone's happy again. Maybe this drags out like the 70s or other bad bears where it's like a decade of this. And the problem is so many people that are our age, like I'm 32, a lot of people my age have never experienced a real recession in its normal sense, where it's not like 2 weeks long. So many people we see on Twitter and have conversations. I have friends who grab my ear all the time. And it's like, hey, man, just buy the dip. And then like 4 days later, they're wondering why they bought the dip. Why haven't they made a fortune off buying the dip yet? It's like, it doesn't just rebound in 4 days. Like, yes, that happens sometimes usually because of market manipulation. That's what you've experienced. But you better get ready. This could drag out for a really long time. How convicted are you when you say you're going to buy the dip? You better really understand what that statement means. And I really hope that this time, if it's a prolonged bear market, I wouldn't say it prolonged, just a normal bear market, I hope that people are able to actually stand by through their convictions and not just have an emotional short-term, I'm buying the dip, they're hyped up, and that hype wears off after a few months. You've got to have long-term conviction.
Yeah, that's what I recommend to everybody is that, like you said, the get off zero. Like I say, put enough money in where if it dips 50%, you'll actually feel the sweat. You know what I mean? Like if $100 to use nothing, then like maybe do $500, or something like that. Where if it dips, you're like, oh man, But like if you're somebody that's like, I don't recommend gambling, but if you're like, somebody that's dropping $100 on NFL football games, then like, obviously $100 doesn't mean that much to you. So, but I say like get enough where you're like, if you're really, really tight and you really, really don't like any volatility, if you put $100 in and it drops to 50, you're like, oh man, that's $50. That would be my one brother. That would be my brother if he ever did it. It would be like, I lost $50. I can't believe that. You know what I mean? And do that, get comfortable. And then once you start to understand it, it'll at least get you in the area of understanding why that volatility doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like if you're looking at the long haul, because the other thing I always tell people is make it money that you put in there is money that you can put in your bank savings account and not touch for 4 years and just don't look at it. Because the 210,000 block theory, every 4 years, if you go back 4 years in the past, the price of Bitcoin was never lower at any point. So just do that and rest easy and you'll be fine. But, you people getting levered up and all that crazy stuff. And it's just insane.
Yeah, I guess it's a point of pride for me. It's a big compliment whenever we have times like this. So was it July when it dropped from 53 to 29, or even now, like I haven't had any clients or any family I work with reach out and say like, hey Jim, what's going on with the market? I want to sell. It's nothing. It's crickets, which is great. People,
You must have managed their expectations really well.
exactly. And that's where I have friends that don't really understand what I do. And anytime the market moves a lot, I'll see them like, man, I bet your phone's blowing up. And it's like, if my phone was blowing up because of market movement, I'm bad at my job and did not have a healthy conversation and set healthy expectations up front. So that's a big compliment, is the fact that my phone's not blowing up. Now, ironically, I sent an email about a week ago to two of my clients and said, hey, I just said like, thank you. I'm proud of you. And I just expounded upon that. Like, I'm proud of you and thank you for not blowing up my phone despite this movement. This is like, your situation hasn't changed. Your goals haven't changed. We're going to keep moving. And I had a few clients reach out and say, actually, I was going to reach out. But all of those people said, this seems like a great time to go and buy more Bitcoin. I was like, now you're getting it. So I'm pretty pumped.
That's pretty awesome. So they were going to reach out, but they were going to reach out to buy the dip.
Exactly. It's like, hey, I think now would be a good time to take money out of this account that was invested in this other stuff, and let's go ahead and let's get some more Bitcoin sub 30. It's like, okay, now we've educated well. I'm proud of you.
Yeah,
so.
That's awesome. So so how did you get started in your company, Intentional Living Financial Planning? How did you get into that? Because first of all, I love that you're, on your website, it says, helping families achieve financial independence, and we can get into that. But, that's a great mission. But what started you on that? Where were you before, and how did you transition from that into, managing families' finances?
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a short story long.
Hello, I'm on a call. Oh, you got the football? Yeah. Oh, you made a necklace. Yeah.
What's up, dudes?
He came in second place, and that's his second place trophy.
This episode is brought to you by the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. It is the sleekest, simplest, easiest to use hardware wallet there is, at least as far as what I've come across, because there are a lot of them out there, but sometimes it's a little intimidating to use them, frankly. And Shift Crypto has created a hardware wallet that is simple, easy to use, and somebody with a smooth brain like mine can use it and not be afraid to use it. And like I said before, it's actually addicting. I keep sending Bitcoin off of the exchanges to the hardware wallet because it's simple. It's got a little touch screen. It's about the size of a thumb drive. And it all works right there on the touch screen, and it also comes with a backup. And then you just store your seed phrase and everything in a nice secure location, and get your coins and get your keys off of the exchanges so that they can't rehypothecate them and use them in other places, because we know that probably is going on. And the worst place to have your Bitcoin in a time crunch in a bank run is whenever they're on an exchange and everybody's trying to get them off, and all of a sudden the government and everybody goes, hey, no, can't do that. That is when you'll be thanking me for telling you to go get a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. So go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and use the promo code Bitcoin made simple for 5% off. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
We've got a 4, a 2, and a 1-year-old.
My God. Oh my God. Yeah, you're in it.
We'll be finding out probably any day now if we're having a 3rd or a 4th as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're pregnant already? You are pregnant, but waiting
maybe
to find
haven't
out if a boy
taken a
or girl?
test yet. We just started trying this week. So.
Yeah. We unfortunately have lost 2. One was pretty early. The other one just was this winter, and it was at the beginning of 2nd trimester. Was pretty brutal.
Man.
But yeah, we've and don't worry, I'll cut this part out. Yeah, that was actually how James Lavish reached out to me. I don't know, we were following each other before, but he, I had like hundreds of people reach out and say they had the same thing happen.
What? I think that's I'm not saying this in a self-congratulating manner. I don't bring this up to like have you thank me. But yeah. I remember seeing that, and I think I sent you some sats and said, "Hey, go order dinner."
Dude, yes, I remember that. I tell people that all the time. You and a couple other people did the same thing.
Kendra and I, we've never miscarried, but I have a lot of friends. My brother, they miscarried a couple times last year. I have quite a few friends who have, and it's like, that's hard. And you're grieving, and like, you already have 2 kids and your wife's grieving. It's like, just here, have a break, like go order out and just be able to be together and everything. So man, I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah. Well,
that is why you seem so familiar when we talked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Dude, you have no idea that day. So the day that, because I forget when I got them from a couple different places. There was like 3 or 4 people that sent some sats and basically said a very similar message to you. I remember that, like, go get dinner on us, like, so you can have a night. Because I mean, there was a month period, at least a month, maybe 5 or 6 weeks, where because of everything that my wife had gone through physically, there were some certain circumstances I had to, like, I was doing everything, cooking, dishes, laundry, it was like full on. And being in a entrepreneur business owner, trying to make sure that didn't implode and blow up in my face, which also we happened to move in on New Year's Eve. We moved into our new house, which was like our nice big house, like our forever home. And, so like cost of living went up, and like, all those things went up. And so it was like really stressful. And then I didn't see the sats that you sent for the meal. Swear to God, I'm not making this up. My parents came up. My parents had moved to North Carolina. They came up to visit, and we went out. Like, they were only here for a couple days. We went out to take them to lunch to like this small little restaurant in our small little town. And did you ever, with little kids, take little kids out and it's just an absolute disaster of an experience in a restaurant?
So hard.
And it's like, I mean, they were like grumpy, and then it was like they didn't like what they ordered and they were mad about it. And then at one point my son dropped his his lunch on the floor. They had to bring a new one out, and then he said he didn't like it again. And it was just like, and I had like reached my limit. And I remember driving back to our house, and I was like sitting there, and the stresses of finances and everything, and not that finances were bad, it just was like, we were in a scenario where like we had 2 houses at the moment. So like I felt like I was bleeding out money onto the floor,
Yeah.
And I like to have my finances sorted and know where everything is. But when you're in that scenario of moving, it is like a couple month period of time where you cannot get a clear financial picture. You know what I mean? You just have to trust that, okay, I knew that everything should be where it is, and it'll settle, and I'll be able to reorganize once the dust settles. So, but it was one of those things. I was driving back, and I was kind of like mad because I was like, we went out to eat to have a nice time with my parents. It didn't happen. It was a total disaster. The kids didn't eat their food. I was like, and I have no idea what our finances look like. And I just wasted this money. Like, swear to God, that was my thought process. And I happened to open up whatever app that you had sent it through. And that's when I saw it. And it literally like took away that pain of like, I was like, thank you, plebs, for like helping take it. You know what I mean? Because it was just that moment. It was kind of serendipitous the way that worked out. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, going out to eat with kids, it's like, this is supposed to be fun, dang it.
Yeah, I know. Did you ever
fun?
Did you ever see the Jim Gaffigan quote where he was like, I always wondered why dad was in a bad mood on vacation? And it's like, now you get it. As a dad, you're just like sitting there the whole time. You just see dollars flying out of your pocket for people that don't really care or seem ungrateful. And
I don't know if it was Jim Gaffigan or someone else. It was like, parents don't, when you have young kids, you don't go on vacation. You just babysit your kids in different locations.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
And then you just go out to eat a lot. You just, you're like, oh, well, we ate, we had lunch here, so maybe we could go over there. Might have a snack bar, and then, we can get some food and then go get dinner somewhere, and it's like, that's all you do on vacation. But yeah,
Gaffigan nails everything. What does he talk about when he had their 4th kid? He's like, just, it's like having 4 kids. He's like, just imagine yourself drowning, and then someone hands you a baby.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
It's the most accurate thing. And I'll cut out part of the, like, if you don't want the whole, like, you guys are maybe having a baby thing in there, I can cut that part out If you're,
I don't care. Whatever you
okay.
want. I'm good. I'm open.
You're an open book. Okay. Well, yeah, I felt that way honestly from 1 to 2. And now you have 3. So what was it like, 1 to 2 or 2 to 3? Which was harder?
Oh man,
To use a football reference, I always said going 2 to 3, you're going to go from man to man defense to zone coverage.
it's true. Yeah, I don't know. I think the hardest was 0 to 1. Just that life change. Kendra and I were married for like 7 years before we had any kids. So it was like just us. We got a dog like 4 days before our first kid was born. So it was like just us to a rescue dog and a baby. And our first one had really bad heartburn issues. So it was like he was always crying. He spit up like buckets of throw up every day. Like literally, we did like probably 4 to 6 loads of laundry a day. There was so much spit up.
Yep. On you, on couches, on the baby,
everywhere. I mean, people. I know most of my friends who are parents were like, "Yeah, my kid spits up too." It's like, no, you don't. You don't know. You don't understand what I'm talking about. Like
projectile.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm hoping at this point, if we have a 4th, I'm assuming the way I view it, it's like, does an insane person know they're insane? Probably not. And that's sort of why if we have a 4th, it's like, I mean, I feel like I'm already drowning. What's more water if you're already drowning?
Exactly. Just make if you're getting waterboarded, you might as well just make the pitcher of water bigger,
exactly.
Just dump more on. And yeah, that was the 1 to 2, I feel like kicked our butts the most, because when there was 1, it was like, oh, if he was with my wife, then like I was off scot-free, I was good to go. And then all of a sudden when there was 2, it was like, oh, we both have to be doing something. Like, oh my God.
I was talking to a client earlier. They just had their second. They're 3 months old. They just had their second. I was like, hey, what's going to happen here is in a few months, once like they're old enough and maybe your parents or grandparents, whatever, will go and like take one of them for a day or 2. You're going to have 1 kid. And as far as you're concerned, you might as well be like at a resort on vacation with just 1 kid. I told my wife, I wish I could have like a dozen kids for like 2 weeks and just anchor into that chaos. And then going back down to 3 would be like, oh, just reprieve.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If for those that aren't parents, they have, you will learn one day, the lack of sleep. I mean, it's the best thing in the world. It's the best thing that I've ever done, is being a parent and everything like that. But yeah, it is chaos. And so yeah, getting back to Miami when we're like, all of a sudden like back in college, and I'm like, I was the last night there, I think I was on a rooftop bar till like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, last time I saw I haven't seen 3 o'clock in the morning that didn't involve like rocking a child from like 7 years.
Yeah, I went with a group of guys to Breedlove's thing, and then we were out like running around. It was like 1 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning. We're out Mediterranean restaurant, just hanging out, eating. I was like, what is this? Like, yeah, exactly. I haven't seen 1:30 in the morning without being up in the middle of the night rocking a kid in ages. It was just weird. Like, oh yeah, life continues.
Yep. Yeah. It's a strange thing. And it's hard to then relate whenever you're friends that don't have kids and you're like, you'll get it, like one of these days. But, so anyway, we kind of got derailed there, but what you were about to explain, I forget what you were about to explain.
Oh yeah. You asked how I got into this.
Yeah. What was your background before, and then how you transitioned into, intentional living, financial planning?
Yeah, so I'll start from the genesis, just because it'll give perspective of why I engage the way I do. So after college, I worked a number of jobs and weird stuff in sales. I'm really, really bad at sales. So we were poor for a long time just because I'm bad at selling and I work in sales.
It's usually not a good combo.
Yeah. I just kept doing it. I don't know why. But finally, after a number of years, I always romanticized being a broke newlywed. I don't know why, and I'm glad we were. It was fun. Like date nights were sharing a pint of ice cream while watching a movie on our laptop on our broken couch. Like that was a great date night. So I look back fondly on those days. But after years of this, I had a job that was terrible. The boss was terrible. So I quit without a backup plan. And that led to me being unemployed for about 7 months. And during that 7 month period, I was in my mid-20s, and I really started thinking about, like, what do I want to do? Financial stress became a real thing. And then I just started thinking about how, one, money is, every year that the American Psychology Association has done this study, money has been the number one cause of divorce in the US. Every year that study's ever been done. Mm-hmm. It's always one of the top causes of personal stress, of suicide. So I started thinking about that. If I could help families have healthy conversations about their money. And then I also recognized, even when I was a kid, I thought it was bizarre when I'd hear my parents or friends' parents talk about, like, oh, we always wanted to go to Europe, but we can't afford it. Yet I would see like a satellite on their roof. And it was like, you can't go to Europe, yet you can spend $300 a month on TV. Like, if TV is more important than Europe, just say that.
Yeah.
But why aren't you, if you say that Europe's important, why aren't you using your money for that? So that's where I started thinking during that unemployment time was, wow, if I could help people have healthy conversations around money and then actually use their money for what's important to them in life, how amazing of a job would that be? And I didn't know what a CFP was or financial planning was or anything like that. I just knew I wanted to help people in that capacity. So I went into finance. A friend of a friend helped me get a job. And I just jumped in. I went and studied a bunch. I just spent years working like 70 hours a week and basically just studying any free time I had, and eventually got my CFP, worked in different roles. I worked in retirement planning, primarily working with physicians on their retirement. Went to another small firm, and I worked again with mostly older people who had accumulated wealth, and now we're trying to distribute their wealth in a tax efficient manner. And I had like probably during those years, I probably had like 30 to 40,000 conversations with families about their money. And there were a few themes. One of those themes was the actual financial things that could have been done that, if we just did well from an early age, would have had massive impact on their ability to do the things that they wanted their life to look like. And those could be small things over a prolonged period of time that would have compounded to make a big difference, as well as these larger milestones that, if navigated properly, could have made a massive difference in their life. And I've seen that on average, there's about every 3 years, families will have one of those milestones come up. And then between those 3 years, if you can just do the small things well consistently. So that's number one. I observed, man, if I could catch people earlier to help them correct these behaviors for the small and then these milestones, we can make a bigger impact. And two, even the people who are successful financially, I probably 80 to 85% of the conversations I had, I heard this story of regret. And it usually went something along the lines of, like, the firms I used to work at, we would talk about money primarily. And then I would ask them questions about their life because I was curious. And I do that opposite. I talk about life, and then your money is a tool to help you do what's important to you in life. So we talk about your life first. But what we would do is we would talk about their money, and clearly they are successful financially. And we'd get to that conversation. I'd ask them, like, hey, I'm just genuinely curious. You did really well. Like, why did you decide to do this? And the story usually went, and keep in mind, these people are usually in their 60s and 70s. The story usually went something along the lines of, oh, well, when I was a kid, we didn't have much. So I heard my parents fight about money all the time, and they would argue, and I could tell my parents were just stressed, and we had cruddy clothes, and we didn't have good food, and we didn't get to go on vacations. And it was just sort of not the best childhood. So I decided when I was a kid or a teenager that I wanted to make sure that I did really well financially, so my kids had a better childhood than I had. And then we fast forward and we're in my office, and it's like, well, that's great. Like, you did it financially. You did what you said you wanted to. And now your kids, we had just talked about their kids and stuff. Your kids are grown and out of the house. How was it? You said you wanted to do well financially, so your kids had a good childhood. How was being a parent? How was raising your kids? How was their childhood? And I probably 80% of the time, you could tell it was the first time these families would sit back and sort of think and maybe just and look over at each other and realize, you know what? I was so caught up in the financial side of things. I don't know. I was too busy working and building our portfolio that I don't know if my kids had a better childhood. Yeah, they had lots of things, but frankly, I wasn't very present. Mm-hmm. I missed it. And that's where financially, if we could come in financially and help correct those things, but also if we can help you from an early stage, align your money for what's important to you and help you navigate intentionally what the money is there for, that is what my job is. My job is to help you get articulate about what is important to you in life, and then just use your money in the most efficient and effective manner for that. So that's why I decided to start my own firm, where I work specifically with young families who want early financial independence, primarily for the purpose of spending more time with the people they love and being able to do more of the things that are important to them. So that's why I do what I do and how I got here.
Wow. I mean, that's, speaks to me and where I'm at mentally with, Jeff Booth says it all the time, but our most valuable commodity is our time. And, it's like the movie, it sounds dumb, but the movie that like freaked me out the most, was, the movie Click with Adam Sandler. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then he fast forwarded his life and to get to like the next goal, like when he was partner, and it fast forwarded to whenever he, was out of the house that he didn't want to be in anymore, and all that. And it's like, if you do that, you miss out on like everything, in between. And like, I look at like with us just moving from like our little starter home that we were like crammed in and everything like that. And we were there for 8 years and, and then, but like, I know it's like kind of graduation goggles looking back on it and being like, oh, look at those fond memories, but like, I also was cognizant the whole time of that and like how, special those moments are. And so I'm always hoping that other people can see that. Cause like what are you going to remember more in the future? The money that you earned by working that extra minute, or, earlier this week, the pool people were here opening up our pool and there were 2 frogs in the pool, and my boys wanted to name the frogs and play with the frogs. And so I ended up spending an hour out of the day playing with the frogs with the kids, you know what I mean? And like taking them down to the creek in our property and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, now they're raising the tadpoles in buckets on the back porch, and it's like, that's the type of stuff that's the most valuable, So like, if anything, you should just be using your money to facilitate more of that time.
Yeah.
Not more things.
That's exactly it. And I've had countless conversations with people who say they want financial independence so they can have more time with their family, yet their actions today are not reflecting the fact that a family is important to them. And for me, again, I have 3 young kids. They're 4, 2, and 1. And I'm currently I have this business. I'm currently building 3 other businesses. And I'm really busy. Like, I have a lot going on. But for my wife and I, we desire financial independence. So we have more time to spend as a family and creating moments and memories with the people we love. Like, that's why we want to do this. And we want to do that now. And we're also saving financially so we can do that in the future, and hopefully in an even more grand way. Mm-hmm. But if I tell you that the reason I want financial independence is so I can spend time with my kids, how foolish would it be for me to completely neglect my kids so I can one day spend time with them while missing the moments right now that they want me to tuck them in at night and read them and cuddle them and wrestle them and run around? Like, this is it. If money is supposed to serve that, gosh, do it. That's what's important to you. And that's something that is so much of what I do, is helping remind the people I get to serve, hey, you said this is important to you. I'm not here to tell you that you should not or should not buy something, but rather, is this actually aligned with something you said is important to you? So actually, one thing that we do is, as we begin working with new families, we have them create what's called a statement of financial purpose. And that statement is meant to be a single sentence that encapsulates why money is important to you. And I have a family I work with. We've been working together for a few years now. And about a year ago, they called and said, hey, Jim, we want to buy a house. It's in the same neighborhood, but it's going to cost a few $100,000 more. Can we buy it? So I was like, well, I'm really curious. Why do you want to move? Oh, well, it's down the street and blah, blah, blah. So we looked at the numbers because they want to just get a quick answer. So we went and mathematically, yeah, you could buy it. Instead of retiring at 45, you might have to work till you're 47. But yeah, you can definitely do this. So now that we know the numbers check out, like, why do you want to go through the hassle of moving 4 houses down? They told me, well, what's happening here is our current house is sort of crammed. It's comfortable, but it's sort of crammed. And we don't have a pool. And we live in Texas where it's hot. And having a pool is pretty important. And for a lot of people. So he said, and the thing is, this new house has a pool that our current one doesn't. And they have 2 daughters. They're younger. They're early teens. They said, well, our daughters, whenever they hang out with their friends, they always go to their friends' houses who have pools. And so we don't get to see them that often, especially during the summer. They're always gone. I said, well, hey, give me a second. I want to pull up what you told me money is important for. So I read to them their statement of financial purpose. And I just read to them, hey, you told me that we desire financial independence so we can create moments as a family. And I said, look, mathematically, you can afford the house. So I'm here to tell you that you should buy this house because you told me the money is there to serve being able to provide moments as a family together. And that's what this will do. It's not about the house. It's about a place to create moments together. So yes, please buy the house.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I do. And obviously, investments in Bitcoin and tax planning and all those things are simply props to help do that. It's not about Bitcoin. It's not about investments or taxes. Those things help you do what's important to you. And my job is to help you be efficient in those. I love what I do because that's what I get to help people is I get to impact people's lives to help them more so do what they say is important to them.
That's awesome. I mean, that's absolutely the right perspective to have, where there's so many people. I feel bad. Like, the fact that people have to work so late in life is ridiculous, and, that's why I feel bad anytime I leave the kids for a business trip. I was I'm missing out on moments. You know what I mean? Like I've never missed a T-ball game, and I'll probably never miss a sporting event. Like I'd die if I couldn't be there for a sporting event. I'd be devastated. My biggest question is once they're both playing, how am I going to coach both teams? You know what I mean? Like, whereas I don't know, I guess there's people that they lose sight of that maybe, cause like there aren't many people that like have kids and they're like, I don't want to spend time with them, like that. It's very rare. But I don't know. I guess you probably are cued into that a little bit more as to why people lose that.
Yeah. Well, if you want, like, here's how I help families navigate that. So I think a big problem that people have is, well, most people don't have goals, which is an issue. But then a lot of people set goals, but the goals aren't necessarily rooted in something. It's more of like, I need to have goals, therefore I'm going to set something and I'm going to go for it. But goals change and that's fine. But if you don't know why you have those goals, as they change, you're not sure how to navigate that. So how we do this is start off with understanding the values or purpose, the underlying why. So those are the things, values or purpose, that tends to stay really consistent over time. So that's where we anchor into what is important to you in life. Yes, the way that's displayed might change over time, but the underlying theme here is going to be consistent. If it's spending time with family, if it's building community, if it's serving other people, if it's your faith, those things stay consistent. So those are the values. Mm-hmm. Once we're articulate about your values, the underlying why, then we establish goals. Goals are going to change. The purpose of a goal is simply to inform what the best next step is to take. Understanding that your goals will change. Now, the thing is, if your goals are aligned with your values, even as the goal shifts, you're still ultimately pursuing the underlying motive there. So values and then goals, and then we look at decisions. What decisions are you going to have to make? Everything requires a decision. Everything requires trade-offs. There's opportunity costs in everything you do. If you choose to go to your kids' T-ball games and be a coach, you're giving up the ability to work more. If you choose to have satellite TV or whatever, I don't know what people have these days. If you choose to have 1 million subscriptions, then you might not be able to go on that Disney trip with your family or whatever. Just understanding what are the trade-offs and the decisions you need to make. So values, goals, decisions, and then finally actions. If if the vision is clear, if those values are clear, the decisions and actions are going to be easy. And once we're clear on the first things, taking action is relatively simple. It's maybe not actually easy to do, but we're not going to waste as much energy because we know ultimately what we're there to do, and we can just act on it. So that's the framework we use: is values, goals, decisions, and actions. We remain anchored in those values, and all of those inform that single statement I made. I said earlier, the statement of financial purpose. After we go through all of those, then we say, what is the single sentence that captures the values and goals you said? And that is our frame of reference. That is the lens through which we view all decisions, especially financial decisions, you're going to make. If you said it's important for you to be able to spend time and be there with your kids at night, yet right now you're wanting to buy a Maserati, and that's going to force you to work 10 more hours a week so you can pay your car note, therefore not being able to tuck your kids in at night, we need to reassess what you said is important to you, or reassess that decision to buy the Maserati. That statement guides that decision.
God, now I'm feeling like I need to go sell my car because I will. That's like it's not a Maserati, but that is one of my guilty pleasures. I like nice cars. And this sounds like I didn't buy this, but this is what happens in the movie business is you end up lucking into things sometimes. So for a period of time, at literally no cost of my own, I had a Jaguar F-Type, like 2-seater convertible, the sportiest of sport cars that just absolutely roared up and down the highway. And it was hard to say goodbye to that. And then whenever we upgraded, I was like, and I got a Land Rover. But I've been thinking, it's been weighing on me for like 6-7 months where I'm like, I could sell that and just buy a more, like, what am I doing driving around in this? Like a time preference view, because I obviously bought that before I was a Bitcoiner. And so like, if you look at one of the rails came off where you would put the like, what do you call it? The roof rack.
Yeah.
So like we didn't have a roof rack on it, but like the fiberglass thing that goes over where the roof rack gets attached that makes it look like a solid roof, that flew off. I was driving down the highway in the fall and I haven't replaced it. And I thought about that recently. I was like, that's how I know that like I'm in, like my time preference is properly aligning, because that would have driven me nuts and I would have immediately replaced it before I was a Bitcoiner. And now I'm just driving around with it. I'm like, yeah, whatever, like it's, why am I going to spend $250 on that piece? I don't need it,
So my job, again, it's not to tell you whether or not you should buy or sell this nice car, but rather help you. And whenever I work with families, it's emphatic that both spouses are present in these types of conversations, that you and your spouse are aligned. And again, just understand what's important to you and just use your money for that. I'm like, I mean, gosh, I my personal, Jag F-Type thing is I want to have a house in the mountains one day, like probably in Telluride or Jackson Hole. This house that I want is probably going to cost like $5 to $7 million. Like that's stupid. Like no one needs a $7 million house. But that's something I want. Now I have to look beyond, like, why do I want that? And the reason I want that is I want that place is it's not a trophy. It's meant to be a special place for my family and friends to be able to gather for generations. And again, it's a meeting ground, a gathering place. So we as a family and friends can build memories and moments together. So it is a place to facilitate that. Like, that's why I want it. And again, if I go back to like, it's important. The reason I want this is because it's supposed to be a place that we build memories as a family. That goes back to, okay, am I so wrapped up in getting enough money so I can have this house that, again, I'm neglecting my kids, that finally by the time I can afford a house in Telluride, that my kids don't want anything to do with me because I neglected them for their childhood? I missed the whole point.
Yeah.
So again, my job is not to tell you like you should or should not get this house in Telluride, or you should or should not have this car, but rather help you become articulate. That's like probably like 80% of my job is like not even financial. It's just like lay down on this couch. Let's talk about what's important to you. And
so you're like a therapist, and then
yeah,
you just happen to help people with the financial aspect of the therapy.
exactly. And then it comes in, it's like, oh, okay, you said this is important to you. Here's the most efficient and effective way to actually do that. If we do these things, you'll get there sooner.
Yeah. I mean, that's you know, I the thing that you can't lose sight of what you're doing it for, because one of the things with us having our small little house that, like, we were crammed into, was it was great excuse for never having to have family get-togethers. Like, we always, I mean, we love family get-togethers, but we never had to host them, because we didn't have, I mean, nobody would even ask us because we didn't have the space. It was like, oh, like, how are we can't even, I think we had like one or two, and like everybody was like standing. It was like, yeah, I mean, it'd be great if we could sit, but there's not enough chairs and there's not enough space for chairs. So, hope you enjoy this. And then, so we move into this new house, and, Easter's coming up, and I was telling my wife, like, I think we got to host Easter. And she's like, oh, well, we just moved, like, do you think your brother will do it again this year? And I was like, maybe. And then I thought about it, and I was like, that's why we moved into this house. You know what I mean? Like, we moved into this house so that we could have space to have our family over and memories and all that stuff. So, we got to do it. So even though once you get there, you can't lose sight of the fact of why you did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so that's a inspiring message for people. And now, where with, Bitcoin from a macro perspective, you personally, are you like all Bitcoin all the time, and just maybe like a little bit sprinkled in other things, or are you more aligned with what your clients are doing and spreading out? Like, how do you spread your focus?
So
I'm not
my
talking about your
financial,
dollars. You're like, I'm talking about, like, how do you spread like what you focus on at the time? Like, do you think everything's so broken that really you just have to focus on Bitcoin until everything else gets fixed?
as far as like analyzing and thinking and opportunities.
Yeah, well, I guess there's never never going to run out of opportunities, or at least ways to identify opportunities in the market. So, uh, yeah, what do you focus on most at this point, I guess?
I mean, I love all things financial planning. So I guess just a snapshot of the people I work with. The average family I work with is about 33, usually has a couple of kids, or at least expecting their first kid, or want to have kids in the next year or two. And I'd say about 70% of the families I work with own a business, either as their primary source of income or as a side hustle. Usually they own real estate outside. About 60% of my clients own real estate outside of their primary residence as well. So there's plenty to keep us busy. Outside of, yes, Bitcoin does play a role. I will say that I view Bitcoin just as the way I would view good tax planning or good estate planning or anything else. It is again, just simply a tool to help you do what's important to you. And I want to make sure we're doing good tax planning. We're doing good estate planning. We're doing good Bitcoin planning. Bitcoin, I think, just happens to be an asymmetric opportunity. That's why I get jazzed up. And a lot of people want to talk to me about Bitcoin, but I don't view it as this, like, it's not about Bitcoin. In the same way, it's not about your taxes. If we can just do that well, that will further these things. So yeah, as far as the focus, I mean, I love, like, I spend a lot of time on like business planning, again, helping my clients on business entity structuring and cash flow management and all that stuff. We work on a lot of tax planning, real estate holdings, what you should be doing there. And then, yeah, Bitcoin certainly plays a role in how much Bitcoin should you own? Where should you buy it? How should you buy it? How should you custody it? What are you doing for your estate plan with your Bitcoin? I mean, those are definitely conversations we have. But again, it's not necessarily about Bitcoin itself. It's when we want to make sure we're using that properly in the most effective manner we can. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. So what do you think is going on with the Bitcoin? I mean, the markets in general, because I think we're going into a recession personally. That's my uneducated view. I'm a dumb filmmaker, business owner that doesn't know anything about financials. This is not financial advice ever. If you're taking financial advice from me, then you've got bigger problems, and you probably, yeah, I don't know. The vibe is weird right now, and like I definitely didn't see this drawdown once we hit 69K with Bitcoin in November. I was like, I actually had to sell some at that point. My listeners know to buy the house because we weren't able to sell and buy at the same time. Um, and so it was fortuitous, but at the time I was like, my God, like I'm gonna sell this Bitcoin, and then by the time I can buy it back, it's Bitcoin price is gonna be like 150K, and you know, I thought it was over, and then evidently it wasn't. So I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Is it macro? Are these not going to decouple? Is Bitcoin not going to decouple from the market? And what's going to happen here? What do you see is happening? Not prognostication. Just what do you think is happening?
Yeah, well, one, your story, I think you're actually just a market timing genius, and you're just being very humble about it.
Let's go with that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a genius. And
yeah,
the funny
man.
thing, I bought, or we sold our house. I've told this story, so my listeners are probably like, "Shut up, move on." But when I sold our house, we were supposed to sell it the Friday before Ukraine got invaded, and then it got pushed back to that Tuesday. So by the time the money check and everything cleared, and I was able to buy back into Bitcoin, I was literally like watching the news of like the invasion happening, and like the price was at like 38K, and it just started tanking like as my finger was hovering over the button. And so I was just like, let me just wait here like 2 hours, see what happens. And I mean, it dropped to like 4K, and like it was just I mean, I'm a religious person, so like I think there's sometimes like fortuitous. They're not like, it's not like everything's defined and everything's pre-planned or whatever, but there are times where like little things, like God doesn't want countries to invade each other, so that probably sounds bad whenever you're saying it that way. And I'm not trying to say I benefited from a war starting. It just, it was like almost this fortuitous bounce of like out of my own hands where it for no reason it got moved from Friday to Tuesday, because otherwise I would have literally cleared the check and bought all the Bitcoin then. And I don't know, I'll probably cut that part out because it sounds like I'm bragging about it, but anyways.
Hey, you're able to stack a few more sats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as far as what I think is happening, I don't know. Also, don't. I mean, this is not financial advice. I don't know. You know as much as me. Like everything is so chaotic. It's infuriating how broken the system is. That we are. You mentioned decoupling earlier. We have decoupled from like economics and a free market to, well, let's just wait and see what like these couple of people have to say, and that's what it's all driven by. How terrible of a system is that? It's infuriating. There's no rationality. You can't say that, hey, this thing is undervalued or overvalued. This thing is a safe and this thing is speculative. Like, I mean, gosh, like looking at Target and these big retailers, like major companies are trading like penny stocks right now. It's nuts. And that's symptomatic of a broken structure. If you put a gun to my head, and again, I don't know what's going to happen. This is not advice. Like I'm just saying, like speculation. If you put a gun to my head and said, what would you see the most likely outcome here? I think what we're looking at is like the 70s. I think we're going to enter a phase of stagflation, where inflation is not going to slow down for a while. Even if inflation slows down, like you have to have deflation to offset inflation. I don't think that's going to happen for quite a while. So even if inflation, quote unquote, slows down, like we set a new benchmark of prices, in my opinion. So I don't think inflation is going to slow down anytime soon. Heck, I mean, that's Target yesterday had their earnings call. Their stock was down 25% yesterday. I'm sure they're down more today. I haven't looked, but a lot of that was because they missed their earnings by, it was like 28% miss.
Wow.
And they, along with other retailers, Costco, Walmart, these people are saying it's because their operational costs are significantly higher than they thought, which that tells me if their operational costs are higher, therefore they didn't make as much money. I'm not a macro genius, but my understanding there is that these major retailers have not yet passed all of their operational cost increase over to us yet. And if that means anything, if they're missed by 28% was because their operational cost was 28% higher than they thought it would be, then I would think that sometime soon your local retailers' costs are going to go up somewhere around 10 to 28%. I don't know, but so that's my thoughts on inflation. And the stagflationary environment is bad inflation mixed with the fall in assets. Hard assets are difficult, so we'll start with some simpler ones like the stock market, the bond market. I say simple. I don't know what the heck's going to happen here. Interest rates, if they keep propping them up, the bond markets get destroyed. I mean, gosh, existing bonds are trash. What do you own cash and hope that inflation doesn't burn you more? Do you buy the stock market that, well, before this drop was trading at multiples like we haven't seen since the dot-com bubble? Yeah, it makes sense that everything's burning to the ground. We've been sitting in a forest of pine needles stacked yards high, and now we're surprised there's a forest fire the moment lightning strikes. That's a healthy thing to happen. And frankly, I almost wish that we would allow this forest fire to take place. So finally, we can see some rebirth and regeneration of healthy economics.
You know what? That actually is kind of a good analogy to the way that across the border in Mexico, they manage wildfires as opposed to how they handle them in California. Have you ever seen that? I might have brought this up on the show before, but so across the border in Mexico, they have the wildfires more frequently, but they're smaller and they just take care of themselves because they burn off the dead brush. Where in California, they try to manage the forest fires and manage Mother Nature. And so they all of a sudden have this buildup of dry brush. And then the moment that there's a spark, boom, you have people driving down the 405 with, the entire hill, like mountainside engulfed in flames, So it is kind of funny that you think because we try to manage Mother Nature, and now we've been trying to manipulate the stock market and everything. And now we have all this dead wood just sitting there.
Yeah. And people don't understand that the intervention are like, dang, you and your capitalism, you're breaking everything. It's like, no. Like capitalism would be Mexico's forest fire thoughts. It was the intervention of California's intervention that has brought this issue. It's not capitalism. It's the intervention and mixed signals that are being put out there from the people that are coming in and intervening. So it's really frustrating. So I don't know, but the other hard thing is like, I mean, heck, if we look at different asset classes, what could happen here? I get asked this all the time as far as real estate. Like, what's going to happen with real estate? I don't know. Again, you all know as much as me. I'm not a genius, and I don't have a crystal ball. But with real estate, it does look a lot different than in 2007, 2008. I have a lot of friends that are like mortgage officers and all that stuff. So we look at the data for fun to see like the amount of existing loans and the average credit score for loans that are in existence. There are so few, comparatively speaking, there are so fewer loans in existence for people who have bad credit scores compared to in the early 2000s. So 2000 was this speculative bubble built by school teachers and strippers and people who didn't have much assets, and a lot of them had poor credit. Nothing against school teachers and stuff. I'm just saying, like, yeah, it was built on people who couldn't afford $5 million houses and like 4 of them. And right now, we're not looking at a whole bunch of speculative people with like going out and buying a bunch of houses on bad credit. It's a lot of normal people. And the problem is if you're going out to buy a house right now and you're competing against a dozen people, yeah, maybe you're competing against, a couple other families who are trying to buy their forever home as well. But you're also competing against like BlackRock and hedge funds and pensions and these groups. And they get cheap money. Like we're going to talk about Canalon, like that's huge. It's infuriating. So I don't know what's going to happen as far as the housing market either. Like we're not thinking like what happens if this bubble pops and people have been like individuals with bad credit who've been speculating and over levered. We're talking about like institutions like that will have to collapse most likely in order for this to collapse. Maybe I'll eat my words in like a week. I don't know, but it makes me think that it makes me question what's going to even happen with real estate and these other hard assets. And then going back to Bitcoin, as far as that decoupling, obviously right now that's trading in a speculative manner. That goes back to like an hour ago when we were talking about understanding the difference between volatility and risk. I personally believe that Bitcoin, if you look at what it is, the use case of it, and the necessity for healthy, sound, hard money, I think it is outrageously safe while super volatile versus these other things. Like it's
like I think a bond that isn't volatile, but very unsafe.
Exactly. So that's where we're seeing right now the volatility, and I would hope that over time people start to recognize the use of it, the need for hard money that is decentralized, and people will start to recognize there is a difference between again volatility and risk. And as that happens, that will be hyper Bitcoinization, and that will be leading to this alignment of risk and volatility. We'll see lower volatility. Again, we've had these conversations I've had these conversations, I'm sure you have, as far as my goal is for one day Bitcoin to not really be even discussed, in the same sense as like, I don't discuss the internet with friends.
Mm-hmm.
I don't talk about the US dollar with friends. And I hope Bitcoin gets there. And that will be when Bitcoin is no longer very volatile and it's not really seen as risky. It just is. That's the goal.
I agree. We don't talk about, hey, what do you think of TCP/IP?
Yeah.
It's like, at most you maybe have a conversation about what browsers you use, which is layer 2, layer 3. I think that's whenever Bitcoin wins. And hopefully we're there soon. I think it's going to happen. I just hope it happens as gracefully as possible and not as violently as possible. Because, there's that little part of me that it's like the Heath Ledger Joker that just, wants to watch the world burn and sit there, like it's not about the money, and like, not that like for people, like, I mean, I want to watch the elites all squirm and get uncomfortable and be like, oh, it's not this, little cream puff world that we had built up for us. But anyways, I guess I should let you, give people a handoff where you're gonna where they can find you and your company website, and if people want to reach out to you to, kind of get their, their planning under control. You've done a good job of selling it, but go ahead and pitch people that are listening that maybe want to get financial independence and have some aid in that. How could they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Jim Crider TX, as in Texas. And then you can go to my website. It's Intentional Living FP, as in financial planning. So intentionallivingfp.com. And on my homepage, there's my calendar. Feel free to put 15 minutes on there. If you have a one-off question about anything, if it's like, hey, what should I do with what's my 401k, or I have this money laying around, should I buy Bitcoin with it? I'd be more than happy to try to answer your question for you. Or if you want to talk about maybe working together, I would be more than happy to spend a few minutes and see if or how it can be of help.
Awesome. Well, Jim, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you.
All right, everybody, that'll do it for this week's episode. Want to thank Jim again for coming on, and also want to thank our sponsor, Shift Crypto, in the BitBox02 hardware wallet. Check them out at shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin Made Simple and use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple for 5% off. Talk to you guys next week.